So in this video, I'm going to lay out my initial steps for my 2-year transfer strategy to at the very least allow United to be in a position to compete for the Premier League come 2026, and that's going to include not just how to use the free transfer market in order to improve the squad, but also to potentially raise money using this certain theory that I haven't really heard people talk about that much, which long term could massively help United's FFP situation. The reason I say 2 years is because I think this summer is going to be very chaotic, with Omar Barada only joining in July, Dan Ashworth's arrival date still unknown, and United likely not having Champions League football. And so I'm first going to go through why I would have Roberto De Zerbi as manager or head coach, how I would utilise free transfers this summer to not only improve the squad, but also raise money in the future. So we'll start off with Roberto De Zerbi, and the reason I would love Roberto De Zerbi as Manchester United manager, or what I would call a head coach, is because I think he's the most innovative and forward-thinking tactician in world football. The issue with Ten Hag and even Tuchel and Pochettino is that whilst back in 2019 and 2020, all three were undoubtedly three of the best tacticians in world football, as the tactical side of the game has developed massively at the start of the 2020s, I think these three have failed to adapt. And so when looking at who I would want as head coach, I think it has to be someone who can not only go head to head tactically with the best tacticians in world football in 2024, but also as the game develops as well, also has the creative thinking to adapt their tactical systems with the changing trends, coming up with innovative methods to change their build-up, possession and pressing systems as other teams and other managers begin to find ways of dealing with what they are currently successful in doing. And I think over his time at Sassuolo, Shakhtar and now Brighton, De Zerbi has proved that he isn't just a follower of the tactical trends, but also someone who can come up with his own unique systems and patterns of play. But before I get into that, if you like me prefer the retro jerseys to the new season ones, go over to Jersey FIFA. You can check out all their Manchester United retro jerseys through the 1990s and 2000s, as well as from other club and international sites as well. You can use code Atlantis at checkout for a discount. A link will be in my Instagram bio, which I will leave linked in the description. So at the moment, despite managing a Brighton side which in all fairness doesn't have the quality of individual players that he would have at United, De Zerbi's build-up strategy is still incredibly impressive, one of the best in world football, with Brighton being able to bait the opposition's press and not only play out of that press, but also use the opposition's high pressing system against them, dropping the central midfielders and fullbacks deep around the edge of the box, inviting the opposition's forward and midfield lines to squeeze up the pitch, and then using patterns of play which involve intentionally playing quick short passes through the centre or sometimes around the press to then exploit the space that the opposition's midfield has vacated while pushing high up the pitch. I don't know how some people can watch Brighton's build-up strategy and not be incredibly impressed with what De Zerbi has been able to do, something that is purely down to his philosophy and ideas and not inherited from another manager. If you can master the build-up phase and work the ball into the middle third, this then sets you up to be able to progress the ball through the middle third and then into the final third. However, I will be coming on to how I think De Zerbi can innovate his system further, as I anticipate that eventually teams will just resist the urge to press and sit off in a deep compact defensive block in the middle third, waiting for De Zerbi's side to break them down rather than playing into De Zerbi's hands by pressing high. But it's not just in possession where I've been impressed with De Zerbi. For quite a while now I've been saying that Ten Hag should have moved to a back five, at least out of possession in the middle third, either by dropping a central midfielder into the back line or having one of the wide attackers in the midfield line drop back into almost what would be a wing back position, because rather than having Dalot constantly overloaded with a player in the half space on his inside and an overlapping wide player on his outside in a back four, with the extra player in the back line, you can now go man for man with less confusion. And that's exactly what De Zerbi did against Arsenal and Liverpool, instructing Adingra to drop into the back line when needed, with Lamptey on the other side tucking in very narrow to allow Brighton to then congest the centre of the pitch. And even though those who just look at the result will dismiss this, if you actually watch the full game, you'll see that Brighton were incredibly good at limiting ball progression into the space between the lines and into the final third. And so all in all, I just have faith that De Zerbi, having already proved he can innovate tactically, can innovate once again when the next tactical change comes along where other managers won't be able to. But moving on from De Zerbi, what is my overall transfer strategy? Well, usually what happens is when you ask people the issue, a lot of United fans will say we need to completely rebuild the squad and get rid of all the dead wood. And then when I suggest a plan that involves selling 8 or 9 players and bringing in 6 or 7, everyone tells me it's completely unrealistic and that it's not FIFA, which is just not true. Well, the unrealistic part, of course it's not FIFA. You can clear house majorly if you do have an effective recruitment and selling team, which United should now have under Ineos, and replace those players. But obviously you can't go out and sign 10 players for £30 to £50 million each. But what you can do rather than keeping the deadwood, who really are just making up the numbers at this point, like Lindelof, Eriksen and Van der Beek if he returns, is you can utilise the youth system and free transfers. As by promoting players like Oyedele, Gore and Fernandes if he returns, you don't then have to go out and sign players for 20 to 30 million just to be squad players. Also, by utilising the free transfer market, not only are you reducing your overall transfer spend because you don't have to pay transfer fees, which is obvious, but you can also do these deals fairly quickly, meaning that if you bring in 8 or 9 players, you're able to do this because if there are 2 or 3 free transfers in there, you save time because you don't have to negotiate with another club, just the player and his agent. But something I haven't heard people discuss is how you can use the free transfer market to sign players, even if long term they might not be the players you see as main contributors in the squad, but just so you can keep them for 1 or 2 years to make up the numbers in the squad at a decent level and then sell them on for a significant fee. For example, if you watch my previous Director of Football series, I said that I'd likely keep Victor Lindelof just for squad depth. However, now I'm thinking, would it not be better to sell Lindelof, who's in the last year of his contract, for around £6 to £7 million, and then go out and sign Tosin Adarabioyo on a free to fill that spot as a backup centre-back in the squad? First and foremost, I think Adarabioyo is a better centre-back than Lindelof, and he's also 26, 27 at the end of September, and so realistically you could sign Adarabioyo for next season, sign another centre-back as a starter, and have him, Willy Kambwala, and Luke Shaw, if he's ever fit, as backups to Lisandro Martinez and another centre-back, allowing you to sell Harry Maguire and Lindelof for around £20 million combined, and also get Rafael Varane's massive wages off of the books, and then come next summer, if there's another centre-back who is better than Adarabioyo, and maybe fits the Zerbi system better, we can sell a 27-year-old Adarabioyo, who's also a homegrown player, for probably around 25, maybe as much as £30 million, to then reinvest in a new centre-back, which to me seems a lot smarter than keeping Lindelof for a season and allowing him to go on a free. I think that's incredibly smart business and the sort of forward thinking that can allow United to gain an edge in the market. But it's not just for financial gain that United could use free transfers this summer. I would also suggest trying to move on Christian Eriksen, who's also in the last year of his contract and is on around £7.8 million a year, which is around £150,000 per week. Eriksen is only going to be a backup central midfielder for squad depth next season and doesn't really have the legs to play in a midfield double pivot. So who do United sign as his replacement? Well, I would go for Ross Barkley, whose Luton contract may expire at the end of the season. For some reason it seems unknown as to when Barkley's contract expires. Transfer Market, who are probably the most reliable for when players' contracts are expiring, don't even have a date for his contract, but I have seen reports from when he signed for Luton that it was only a 1-year deal, which would make him a free agent come the summer. If you guys do want to see it, I'll do a separate video on why I think Barkley is the exact sort of player that United need to be looking for, if anything just from a squad building perspective. Getting Eriksen and Lindelof's salaries off the wage bill, which collectively is over £300,000 per week, as well as recouping around £6 to £7 million for Lindelof and replacing those two with 2 homegrown players in Barkley and Adarabioyo, who would both be on around maybe £60 to £70,000 per week, half of what Lindelof and Eriksen were on, with the prospect of selling Adarabioyo next summer for £25 to £30 million. It just makes perfect sense to me. Also, selling Altay Bayındır for around £8 to £10 million, around double what United brought him in for last summer, and bringing a homegrown backup keeper like Jason Steele from Brighton for around £5 million, which would probably also be in the interest of Bayındır, who seems to want first team football, and that would mean that United have replaced 3 squad players who realistically aren't going to be starters, 2 of which are on very high wages, with 3 homegrown players for next to nothing, on decent enough salaries for squad players, which would also free up funds elsewhere, and crucially allow United to sell the likes of Sancho, Rashford, Greenwood, McTominay, Maguire and Wan-Bissaka, and not have to worry about having enough homegrown players in the squad, with academy graduates like Gore and Oyedele, and maybe even Fernandes as well, also coming into the squad. So let me know what you think of those 3 deals. I think it makes sense both from a homegrown point of view, as well as improving the squad overall as well. Also, tapping into using free transfers in the long run could also allow United to raise money, bringing in players for next to nothing, and selling them on for a profit. So let me know your thoughts. If you want some exclusive content, you can check out my Patreon podcast, which will be linked in the description, as well as some of my other videos as well. And make sure you subscribe to the channel and click the bell so you do get notified when my videos come out.